One of the most powerful aspects of ZBrush is a feature called dynamesh. It simply allows you to pretty much create exactly what you want. I'll show you what I mean.
So if you create a sort of standard sphere, like we've been showing in the previous chapters, and you just subdivide it with Control-D, you are bound by the resolution and the topology of the sphere, which means that at a certain point, you will run out of resolution. So go up, make a polymesh 3D, and already now you can see once we start with the move tool dragging it out, we're running out of resolution.
So if I were to subdivide this right now, it would, you can see we get more resolution. We can still sculpt in some of this.
Just remember Shift F, you can preview the wireframe.
The Shift F, you can see exactly what's going on. So if I start to sculpt in this now, standard brush, BST, you can see we get this like really nasty result. If I sculpt across here, you can see the polygon stretching. And the solution is, if you don't have dynamesh, subdivide again. Then it gets finer, and we're already at 500,000 polys. Subdivide again, and now we're at almost 3 million polys.
But you can see we're still getting really shady results because there's just not a lot of topology to work with.
Exactly. So if we do this again, we go back to the sphere, we go to make polymesh 3D, and instead of just subdividing regularly, we're going to go to Geometry, Dynamesh, and here that's no dynamesh, and dynamesh, there we go, dynamesh, and you have a button here called dynamesh. Let's just click dynamesh and see what happens. Visually, nothing has happened, but if you hit Shift F, you can see that everything changed.
Everything. Literally everything changed.
If you hit Control Z, this is the old one, and Control Shift Z, which is the new one, you can see that it essentially just it just evened out all topology with new topology. So if we now go and use BNV for the move tool, and we stretch it out now, you're going to see the same thing happen. We still have the same stretching. But as we have dynamesh now, we can now activate dynamesh. We can remesh this. The way we remesh it is we hold on the Control key and we drag outside the model.
Now this might be a little confusing because this is the same workflow when masking things.
Yeah.
But that's how ZBrush works.
That's just how ZBrush works. So the command for creating the dynamesh is the exact same command as it is to clear a mask.
As long as dynamesh is activated.
Yeah, exactly. So now you can see it goes from really shady topology to really nice and even topology. This means that we can essentially just have a sphere and just keep dragging out indefinitely. So once you reach the point where it's too stretched, you just Control drag outside a model, and nice even topology, and we can just keep doing this. One of my favorite tools when dealing with dynamesh is a brush we haven't covered yet, because it's pretty much only relevant when dealing with dynamesh.
It's such an ugly brush.
It's such an ugly brush. It's called Snake Hook Brush. BSH for brush, snake, hook. So what happens is, this is what everyone does when they start with ZBrush. They use the snake hook brush and they go bananas.
And then it's just ZBrush demon horns everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a brush, if you want to make a ZBrush demon,
this is your friend.
This is your friend. So what happens now is, when you start to drag this out, you can drag it out, Shift F, so you can see what you're doing, and then you can remesh it. And this is an incredibly powerful brush for simple this purpose. You can just drag it out and you can just get some really cool results.
It's basically an aggressive version of just the regular move brush.
Exactly. So it's really good for just adding limbs or just adding volume to it, like adding horns to all your ZBrush demons.
Just horns everywhere.
I have like a lot of ZBrush demons. So this is an incredibly powerful way of working, and I use this for pretty much all my sculpts, particularly if I need to make something creative. Just trying out different forms, it's really powerful.
And like with anything, when you're sculpting, whether you're using the traditional subdivision or you're using dynamesh, the resolution is important.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to start out with mega resolution to start with.
No.
Because then it's going to be too heavy to start working with. So you want to set your resolution to something low where you have a manageable amount of polys. So you can drag things around, create your basic shapes. And then after a while, not by adding super alpha details, but you want to up the resolution a little bit so you can start adding more details.
The annoying thing about dynamesh is this resolution slider here is based on the scale of the model. So for certain models, like this, 128 is perfectly fine. We get 130,000 polys, and it's really good. But for other models, this is going to create like 5 million polys. So when doing this, I start at a really low value just to test it out. I started like 8 just to like see if just to see if the scale is crazy. So if you do this now with 8, with a real low value, this is actually an important bit. So you see we can't actually edit now because we didn't do any changes to it. That's the point I want to raise as well. As nothing was changed, you can't just change the resolution down. You have to actually edit it. So if I increase the resolution now, nothing will happen. In order for me to actually be able to increase the resolution, I have to
do a tiny edit.
Tiny edit, just like the tiniest thing. And it's really annoying. Yeah. But you just have to do that. Welcome to ZBrush. You just have to get used to that.
And here's a problem. Like when you're increasing the resolution too much from a lower resolution, if you go out of polyframe mode, you can actually see that we're retaining all the faces, but we've just added subdivisions in between all of the faces.
Yeah. There is no real way to fix this per se. You just have to
either smooth it or like work your way up through the levels.
Exactly. But this is an incredibly powerful tool. But just know that the resolution slider is scale dependent, and it can only be activated if you've done a change to the model. And you just saw, we're not going to edit this out because when we make mistakes, we want to show you how to fix them. And I've been doing ZBrush for 10 years now, and I still do these stupid, silly mistakes. Because
ZBrush it's illogical at times.
Yeah, it is. That's the life you've chosen now. If you go into the world of ZBrush, that's the life you've chosen. Another tip, which is really nice, is once you get up to a certain poly count, it can be really heavy to remesh this. So a thing you can do is you can simply disable project. If you disable project, it's going to remesh a lot faster. So if you just do this and just do it now, it's going to remesh in like a second. But if we have this on, it might take like 15-20 seconds to remesh it.
And that's because it's projecting the details from the lower levels that we had before.
Exactly.
Or the higher levels in that case.
Just a nice little tip for you, that if it goes slowly, particularly when you work on higher resolutions, I find that it doesn't really matter because you're already working with a high resolution.
So a really cool thing when it comes to Dynamesh is, remember what we showed before with the human head and the dragon? Those are actually dynameshable objects, and they aren't the only ones that you can add and subtract to your model. Yeah. We have some trim brushes that we can actually pull things out of the model. So Henning, he's just dragging heads out on the model.
If anyone needs an art director, come and find me.
And then you just simply go out your model and you control drag next to your model, and it'll merge these together. Now, like with any other brush, you can actually hold down Alt, and you can subtract that model from your mesh as well, and then you drag outside your model, and it'll remesh it with that on the inside. It might be a little tough to see here, but
let's just move it out here. It's super funky. So now you can see a human head crease inside here. So ZBrush is incredibly powerful that you can even do this. That you can make this weird human head shapes. But this is a very powerful way of working. Like, it works additively and subtractively. And speaking of subtractively, we're going to cover a new feature now, which is it's this collection of brushes called the trim brushes. If you hold down, we all done this before, Control Shift, and you just Control Shift, the brush up here is being replaced by selection tools. Here we have a collection of tools called the trim brushes. Let's just use the trim rectangle for now. The trim brushes are amazing because you can simply drag out and it will cut away what you have here. So if, let's say, you don't think this human is amazing, you can just cut it away.
Just like with hiding your mesh before, just hold down Control and Shift, drag onto your model. And
exactly the same command.
And this you can also invert like any other brush in ZBrush. So different way of sort of using the brush has different effects.
Yeah. So this is an incredibly powerful way of working, because then you can make a character with like 10 arms and you can just cut them away. If you want to remove this arm here, it's really hard actually, because you have to smooth it out, or you have to like go into Maya and cut it away.
Yeah.
If you're concepting, you can just go here and just cut it away. But now you can see a problem. We get this like square result because we have a square. We can change it to a lasso. Hold down Control and Shift and change the stroke from rectangle to a lasso. And ta-da!
Beautiful.
Beautiful. So the trim brushes are incredibly powerful. and you can do some really interesting stuff with them. Next up, we have the curved tube brush. That's a really cool brush, which allows you to simply just drag out tubes. If you hit the B key, you can hit C to filter out everything with curves, and here you see it. So B, C, and W. Curved tube is really cool, as it allows you to just drag out a tube.
This can be used for anything from creating hair to creating limbs. I mean, It's really your imagination. Let it run wild.
Amazing. So, as you see here now, it's masked out. We have to clear the mask like we've done before. Control, drag outside the model. Now it's cleared. And now we can dynamesh it. Control, drag outside the model.
And that actually merges the two meshes together.
Now you see here, that is actually, Morten says, is actually merged together.
A cool thing about the curved tubes brush is if you drag out a sort of a curve, you can actually edit it by dragging on the start of the beginning or the start of the end point.
Yeah.
And manipulate it in
and you can also just
ways.
change the midpoint as well. I mean, this is not particularly user friendly when it comes to moving the midpoints, but you can create some very cool results like this. I use this a lot for, like Morten said before, with creating limbs, horns, or just generally experimenting with shapes.